What's going on, friends? If you spend a little extra money getting that CVO model or getting a bike that has one of those Screamin Eagle engines in it, you may not just exactly be getting what you thought you paid for in that motor. Now guys, the Screamin Eagle engines really started back in 2000 with the Screamin Eagle Road Glide. Harley-Davidson took their basic 88, put a 95-inch kit on it, and basically what amounted to the Screamin Eagle 203 cams in it, which was a really nice bump over the 88 at the time. The 88 at the time was putting down about 8.5 to 1 compression and netting you roughly about 60 to 65 horsepower. Now with the 95 in the Screamin Eagle Road Glide, you were getting 9.4 to 1 compression, little bigger bore, the Screamin Eagle 203 cam, which was putting down roughly about 70 to 75 horsepower, and of course the torque was a lot more than on the 88. Torque on a 95 could be anywhere from 90 to 100 foot-pounds, just depending on what the weather's like and where you live. Now on those 95s, what you had the cams, you had the compression, and then you had, of course, the larger bore. But what you didn't get at that time was anything special with the heads. You basically just got the regular old heads off the 88. Now this carried through to 2003 when they did something a little bit special with the 88, and they had the Screamin Eagle 103. Now what they did on this Screamin Eagle 103 was they basically took the 88, ditched the flywheel in it, and they put in a stroker flywheel right out of the Screamin Eagle catalog. They took the 4 3/8 stroke flywheel and paired it with the 3 7/8 inch cylinders, which gave you 103 cubic inches. Now, on this Screamin Eagle engine, they took it a little bit further. They put a special set of heads on it. Well, I say special, a lot of head porters are going to argue that those heads really held that engine back. And in a lot of respects, they're probably correct, but you talk to a different head porter and they're going to be like, oh no, that combustion chamber was too big for what it had. You need to add or take away and flow test. And yeah, just depends who you talk to when it comes to those heads. But kind of the general consensus is that those heads held the engine back. Now on the Screamin Eagle heads, in addition to the stroker crank, the larger bore cylinders, they also upped the compression to 9 to 1. And aside from that, they took it even a step further and they added a more aggressive cam. They basically added the Screamin Eagle 253 cam, which was otherwise known as the CVO cam, going forward when we get to the 110. Now on the Screamin Eagle 103, you're looking at horsepower numbers for about 80-85 horsepower, which is decently respectable for that motor, maybe 75 on the low end, because the low end of an 88 is about 60 to 65, maybe 70. So you were still getting quite a bit of bump in performance over the standard 88. Now, 95s, they'll hang pretty well with that motor, even though it had more displacement, but the Screamin Eagle 103 did produce more torque than the 95. 95s, we're looking at about 85 to 90 foot-pounds of torque, roughly in that area, but on the 103, you could get as much as 100 foot-pounds out of this monster. Well, it was a monster at the time, considering now we have a 131 cubic inch motor out there. So the Screamin Eagle 95 makes its way into the softails for the CVO line up until 2006. Now the touring bikes during this era, they had the Screamin Eagle 103. Now of course in 2007, we got the Screamin Eagle 110. Now the Screamin Eagle 110 was basically the 103 engine. They just swapped the 3 7/8 bore cylinders for 4-inch bore cylinders, and they also upped the cam a little bit with the Screamin Eagle 255. Now, also on the 110, where it differs as well, is it had the, I hate to call them Screamin Eagle heads, because I'm going to get to that here in a minute with what you don't get in these motors, and this is the part they don't tell you. But the heads were not the factory 103 heads. They were basically the CVO heads. They had a little larger valves, a little larger combustion chambers, supposed to flow a little better, but in my opinion, it really didn't make a whole lot of difference. A lot of guys would hop it up a 110. They want you to ditch those cylinder heads anyhow. Go ahead and get you a stock set of 103 heads and then start your porting from there, because a lot of guys don't like the valves in them. When I say guys, I mean head porters. Head porters are like machinists. They're a different breed. So if you've got a CVO with a Screamin Eagle engine in it, it's badged right there on the head, Screamin Eagle, this leads you to believe that these engines are absolutely chock full of everything Screamin Eagle has to offer. Well, this is the part of the video I hate, because this is the part where I have to be the bearer of bad news. The only thing different on these engines is more compression. Of course, you get the CVO heads. You get a little bit better cam in it, a little higher lift, going to give you a lot. They're mainly torque cams, really, not so much as power. But other than that, the motors are completely stock. They really didn't do anything special to the bottom end. So there wasn't any Screamin Eagle push rods, Screamin Eagle lifters. There really wasn't anything too special about these motors, as I mentioned, other than the larger bore, the cylinder heads, and basically a little higher compression and a different cam. Now, the only true Screamin Eagle engine, in my opinion, where they threw everything at the motor was on the 120R and the 120 ST. Now, these engines are what the Screamin Eagle engines should have been in the CVOs and in the later S models. Now, the 120R actually got 10.5-to-1 compression pistons, Screamin Eagle CNC ported MVA heads, not just the little larger valve, little more airflow CVO heads. It got the true CNC ported heads. Now, not only that, they got the Screamin Eagle main bearings, the full large needle bearings, the whole complement for the entire engine. You had the titanium piston rings, the Screamin Eagle lifters, you had the Screamin Eagle push rods, the Screamin Eagle flywheel. You even got the high dollar Screamin Eagle spark plugs in it. Now, I don't know about you, but if I paid a lot of extra coin to get a CVO or get something with that 95, that 110, that 103 in it, I would kind of expect all that to come in the motor and not just have a little bit better for the price I paid. But little word to the wise on the 120R, as the 120R came out in 2011, those bikes actually had the stock factory cam plate in it. Yes, the cast cam plate. It wasn't until 2012 that the 120R actually got that nice billet piece from Screamin Eagle with the high volume oil pump. So if you do buy one that's a 2011 version of that motor, if you pick one up used, if somebody hasn't been in there already, just be aware of that. You'll want to get a good cam plate and oil pump in it. So guys, what really inspired me to do this video was all the questions that I had on these Screamin Eagle motors, mainly centered around the 103 and a concern with those tensioners. Because as we all know, they had bad spring tensioners in those years. Yes, they did. It could, however you want to look at it, it could have been related to the cam chains or just spring tension itself. But a lot of guys were thinking, hey, I've got the CVO. I threw everything at this. Surely I didn't get those spring tensioners. Well, I hate to break it to you, they are the spring tensioners in the Screamin Eagle 103 and the 95s. And then when it came to the 110, a lot of people were like, hey, don't I already have that billet cam plate with that high volume oil pump? And I'm like, I hate to tell you, no, it's the stock cast piece and the stock oil pump as well. So it kind of put me on a rant about this. I'm not happy about it. I've never agreed with it. I think if you were paying that kind of money for what one of those bikes commands that had a Screamin Eagle motor in it, whether it be the 110, the 103, or the 95, they should have came with the factory with everything that Screamin Eagle could have thrown at it, instead of the basic stock factory pieces that are more considered for a cruiser. But I know, Harley-Davidson and performance can almost seem laughable depending on who you are. Hey, they may be cruisers, but when you put some power in them, they're a lot of fun, especially the way they put that power to the ground. Anyhow, guys, that's all I've got for you this week. I really appreciate you hanging around to the end of the video. And if you enjoyed the video, please help the video out by hitting that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. But anyhow, guys, until next week, please ride safe, dodge the cars, don't get run over out there. People are not looking at us, they're looking at their phones. But you guys ride safe, and I will catch you in next week's video. Thanks for watching.